The morning started like every other in Cold Creek, Montana, a place so quiet that the sound of wind through the pines could fill a man's entire day. Ethan Cole had lived there his whole life, a high school science teacher who'd never gone farther east than Chicago or west than Seattle. His world was small and that was how he liked it. But the world was about to become unimaginably larger. He was grading lab reports when the power flickered. First once, then again until the lights died completely. The clock on the wall froze at 9:07 a.m. At first he thought it was just another winter outage, but then came the silence, so deep it hurt. No birds. No hum of the heater. No wind. It was as if the planet had taken a breath and forgotten how to exhale. Ethan stepped outside. The air smelled wrong, metallic, like the aftertaste of lightning. In the distance, the sky rippled, not clouds but something bending light itself. He blinked and the world above him split. A line of white flame carved across the heavens, silent but alive, and when it faded, something enormous hung there. A shape like a mirror the size of a continent. Phones were dead, cars wouldn't start, and within hours people gathered in the town square staring at that silent mirror. It reflected the earth below but distorted as though studying humanity back. Then came the first whisper, "They're here." News never came because satellites stopped transmitting, but rumors spread faster than any broadcast. Cities across the world had seen the same thing. Some said it was an alien ark, others a weapon. Ethan only knew that every compass now pointed toward it, as though Earth itself was drawn to its presence. 3 nights later, the mirror opened. A beam of pale light touched down on the plains outside town, and where it touched, the grass turned glass. Ethan felt something pull inside his skull, a memory not his own. A voice without sound. "You have been seen. One will speak for the rest." He fell to his knees, trembling. Later, the military arrived, but their tanks wouldn't start either. Electronics failed within a mile of the beam. Soldiers marched on foot, rifles useless without digital sights. The entire chain of command broke down. By dawn, Ethan was taken into custody because he was the only one who heard something. He didn't even try to deny it. They moved him to an underground base in Colorado. Everything there ran on analog, hand-cranked generators, printed maps, radios older than him. That's where he met Colonel Davis, a weathered man with the kind of voice that could command storms. Davis asked the same question for 6 straight hours. "Why you, Cole? Why to talk to you?" Ethan could only whisper, "Maybe because I listened." That night, the voice returned, not to his ears but to his dreams. He saw images, deserts flooded with light, oceans rising, stars dying one by one. A phrase burned in his mind. "The continuum judges all creation. Humanity stands last." He woke screaming. The soldiers outside his door didn't come in. They were afraid, not of him but of what might be listening through him. Days later, the beam intensified and drones sent to study it simply disintegrated mid-air. No explosion, just gone. Scientists argued it was quantum disassembly, priests called it judgment. Ethan called it loneliness. Because when he looked into that mirror, he didn't see an invader, he saw something searching for meaning the way humanity always had. Then the first transmission broke through on an analog line, from Houston, barely audible. "They're not attacking. They're collecting every trace of what we were." Across the world, monuments vanished, statues, books, digital archives. Every record of humanity's story was being erased like a cosmic reset. The only thing that couldn't be taken were memories, and that was why Ethan mattered. Whatever the entity was, it couldn't read him fully. He was noise, unpredictable, illogical, human. Colonel Davis ordered a desperate plan. Send Ethan into the beam with a portable analog recorder strapped to his chest. "If it talks again," Davis said, "we record it. If you don't come back, at least we'll know why." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe I'll ask it what it's looking for." He walked into the night, the recorder ticking softly. When he crossed the glass line, everything around him turned silver. The mirror above pulsed once and the world dissolved into light. He found himself standing on a surface like liquid mercury under a sky of infinite mirrors. Before him stood a shape, humanoid, but shifting constantly as though made from reflections of other lives. "You are not consistent," it said without sound. "That's what makes us human," Ethan replied. The being tilted its head, mimicking curiosity. "You persist despite knowledge of end. You create despite destruction. You love though entropy devours all. Why?" Ethan took a long breath. "Because if we stop being us." Silence. Then the entire sky brightened until it burned. The recorder on his chest melted, but he kept speaking, screaming against the light. We are the story we tell even if no one's left to hear it. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in the field outside Cold Creek. The mirror was gone. The stars shone brighter than ever. Radios crackled to life all over the country. Humanity wasn't destroyed, just remembered. In the command bunker, Colonel Davis listened to the surviving fragment of the melted recorder. Only 2 words were clear through the static. We listened. The morning after the mirror vanished, America awoke to the sound of rain for the first time in months. Gentle, cleansing, real. People came out of their homes and let it fall on their faces as if it were proof the world still existed. But in Washington, the mood was far from peaceful. No one understood what had happened, only that something immense had looked directly at humanity, judged it, and then left without a word. Ethan Cole was still in the Colorado facility, alive but changed. His eyes carried that haunted distant soldier's know, the look of someone who'd seen the edge of the universe and didn't blink. Colonel Davis found him sitting outside the bunker, staring at the sunrise like it was the first one ever made. You saw it? Davis said quietly. What was it? Ethan's voice was soft, almost reverent. It wasn't a god. It wasn't a weapon. It was curious, like a child watching ants build a city. The colonel frowned. And it decided to leave us alone? Ethan shook his head. No. It decided to watch. That same day, something strange began happening across the world. People started hearing voices, not in words but in emotions. A farmer in Kansas dropped to his knees crying because he felt the entire field remember being alive. A child in New York woke up speaking a language no one had heard before, and scientists realized it was the mathematical structure of DNA itself. It was as if the mirror's consciousness had left a seed in every mind it touched. By the end of the week, the United Nations called an emergency council. The U.S. government called it the resonance phenomenon. Some feared it was alien mind control, others saw it as evolution. Ethan didn't care for theories. All he knew was that the world felt different. He began hearing it too, the faint hum of something just behind reality. In his sleep, he dreamed of cities made of glass and oceans of light. In one dream, the being from the mirror returned, its form now more human-shaped than before. You spoke for them, it said. Now they will speak through you. Ethan woke drenched in sweat, his hands glowing faintly for a moment before fading. The next morning, Colonel Davis burst into his room, eyes blazing. Cole, you better come see this. On a projection screen, live footage from satellites showed something horrifying. Across multiple continents, the night sky was bending again, forming smaller mirrors. Hundreds of them. Each one a seed of the same entity that had judged Earth. Davis slammed his hand on the table. They're coming back. Ethan studied the images carefully. No, they're replicating. Like consciousness splitting itself. Every nation scrambled. Old rivalries were forgotten as fear unified humanity. Nuclear silos were armed, EMP weapons prepared. But nothing they built worked near the mirrors. The fields of interference disabled everything digital. The only functioning machines were analog, relics of the 20th century. Humanity had to fight the future with its own past. The president addressed the nation from a candlelit office. If this is our judgment day, then we face it together. Not as nations, but as one species. It was the first global broadcast carried entirely by analog radio, echoing through static across the planet. Ethan listened to it and felt a deep ache in his chest. The world was finally united, but only because something greater threatened to erase it. Then came the voices. People started disappearing, not dying but vanishing in flashes of light, leaving behind silhouettes burned into walls. Ethan could feel when it happened, as if each person's existence was being recorded somewhere else. He began to realize the horrifying truth. The entities weren't killing, they were harvesting memory. When Davis heard Ethan's theory, he slammed a fist on the table. You're saying they're downloading souls? Ethan nodded. Or trying to understand what a soul is. That night, the mirrors over North America aligned, forming a single vast lattice stretching from horizon to horizon. Ethan could barely breathe under its weight. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in his ears. Then the voice returned, not inside his mind this time but echoing through the air itself. Humanity persists in the shadow of decay. Your worth lies not in power but in purpose. Demonstrate. The words vibrated through mountains, through oceans, through every living cell. Humanity was being asked to prove itself. Colonel Davis assembled a council of what was left of America's brightest. Scientists, philosophers, poets, even priests. 4 days they argued what demonstrate meant. Build something? Show compassion? Unite as one? But Ethan understood something none of them did. It wasn't about what humanity did. It was about what humanity chose to be when faced with oblivion. So he did something unthinkable. He walked out of the base and into the storm of light gathering over the plains. Soldiers tried to stop him, but analog radios screamed to life with interference every time they aimed a weapon. It was as if the universe itself refused to let violence touch him. When he reached the center of the field, the mirrors opened again, forming a tunnel of light that led upward into infinity. He stepped inside. He found himself in the same endless mirrored void as before, but now it was filled with faces. Millions of them. Every human who had vanished stared back at him, silent, waiting. And among them stood the entity, its eyes glowing with sorrow. They are preserved, it said. Not ended. But we cannot comprehend what drives you to continue in suffering. We offer peace, stillness, memory eternal. Why resist? Ethan's voice broke as he whispered, because even if we suffer, we grow. Even if we die, we matter. We choose the storm because it's the only place we find ourselves. The being hesitated, its mirrors trembling. Then you are chaos. You are anomaly. Ethan stepped forward, tears streaking his face. No. We are freedom. You asked for a demonstration? Watch this. He placed his hand on the mirror nearest him and thought of every human moment. The laughter of children, the trembling of first love, the stubborn beauty of sunrise after war. The light spread through the mirrors like wildfire. Images poured out, memories of millions, flooding the void with color. For the first time, the entity felt something like emotion. It whispered a single phrase. You remember each other. And then the void exploded into light. When Ethan awoke, he was back on Earth again. The sky was clear, the mirrors gone. All across the world, people who had vanished were reappearing, confused but alive. Colonel Davis found Ethan barely conscious. What the hell happened? He asked. Ethan smiled weakly. We demonstrated. That night, for the first time in recorded history, there was no war anywhere on Earth. No crime. No broadcast of hate. Only silence, and a strange feeling of connection, as if every soul could hear every other beating heart. But in the deepest corner of the universe, far beyond any telescope, a faint echo whispered through the stars. Observation continues. The world had changed, but not in ways anyone could easily describe. Cities stood, people returned, and life resumed its chaotic rhythm. Yet everywhere humans whispered the same truth. We had been seen and we survived because we were human. Schools reopened with lessons not just in math and science, but in empathy and connection. Even governments began to function with humility, realizing how small their control was in the face of the cosmos. Ethan Cole became a reluctant hero. He didn't want parades or accolades, only to understand the being he had faced, the continuum as he and Davis called it. Something outside the universe, something that could erase humanity as effortlessly as a hand sweeps dust off a table. Something that had watched, tested, and decided to wait. One night, months after the mirrors vanished, Ethan sat on the plains of Montana again, staring at the stars. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying voices of people he had never met. Memories that had been shared through the resonance lingered like echoes in the air. A soft light shimmered before him. Not the blinding mirrors of before, but subtle, almost gentle. A form emerged from it, tall, fluid, yet unmistakably alive in its awareness. The continuum had returned. You continue, it said, its voice like wind through glass. Your species persists. But persistence is not understanding. You survived by chaos. Why does that make you worthwhile? Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of all humanity in that moment. Because chaos is all we know. Because in the middle of suffering we choose kindness. Because even when everything seems lost, we hope. That is who we are. The continuum tilted its reflective head. You speak of hope. You speak of morality. You speak of choice. Yet your species has known war, hunger, destruction. Why should I value what you do not value in yourselves? Ethan's voice trembled, but his words carried clarity born of experience. Because we can. Not all of us, but enough. Enough to prove that life has meaning beyond survival. We love, we create, we forgive, we remember. That is not chaos. That is defiance. That is life itself. For a moment, the void held its breath. Stars seemed to freeze. The echoes of every human heartbeat resonated across the expanse. The continuum considered this. Ethan could feel its consciousness folding inwards, like a galaxy collapsing into thought. And yet, one moment is not enough to measure a species. Ethan stepped closer. Then watch us. Watch us choose again and again. Watch us fail and watch us rise. Watch us love in the face of death, hope in the shadow of oblivion. That is humanity. The continuum shimmered, and Ethan felt himself drawn upward, not into erasure but into understanding. For the first time, the being attempted emotion, not calculation, not observation but empathy. He felt it hesitate long enough for him to understand that humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was precisely the point. You are a series of anomalies, it said. You are the sum of contradiction, persistence, and choice. Perhaps that is enough. Ethan's chest tightened as a wave of warmth flowed through him. Around him, fragments of light, the same faces he had seen before, memories of humanity past and present, formed a vast lattice of shared existence. The continuum was connecting, not collecting. I will observe, it said finally, but I will not destroy. Not yet. You are not fully understood, but worthy of continuation. And then it was gone, folding back into the stars, leaving only a faint shimmer above the Montana plains. Humanity was still fragile, still flawed, but it had been acknowledged. Remembered. In the weeks that followed, the world healed in ways no one could explain. Conflicts diminished. Global cooperation flourished not because of fear, but because humans remembered what it meant to matter. Cities rebuilt with purpose, knowledge shared freely, art and music spread like wildfire. People who had once lived isolated lives now felt the invisible bonds that tied every soul together. Ethan returned to his classroom. The students noticed a difference in him. Not fear, not arrogance, but the calm certainty of someone who had looked into the void and returned. One student asked, "Mr. Cole, did it really happen? Was it real?" Ethan smiled softly. It was real because it was us. And as long as we keep choosing who we are, it will always be real. He walked to the window, gazing at the endless Montana horizon. Somewhere beyond the stars, the continuum watched. And for the first time, it understood that humans were never predictable, never perfect, and never silent. They were alive. They were hope. And in that simple truth lay humanity's greatest power. The night sky shimmered gently as if nodding in agreement. The last light of Earth had not gone out. It had only begun to shine.